Starting with Maya 2022, the default settings for color management in new scenes is based on ACES, the Academy Color Encoding System. The new defaults are a better fit for modern color workflows, but they behave quite differently from the old settings. You can still revert to the legacy defaults, but first let's look at why the new settings are the way they are. The world around us has a very wide range of colors and intensities, but monitors and other devices can display only a more limited range. ACES is designed to emulate the color process used in movie making by mapping the high dynamic range of the scene to a more limited range for display, using a tone map for a photorealistic result. This makes it easy to set up lighting for a pleasing image, as well as to combine rendered images with live footage. Maya's default rendering space is ACES CG. This is a wide gamut linear rendering space recommended by industry leaders. It lets you explore the entire gamut of new high dynamic range and wide color gamut televisions, because it encompasses the entire gamut of HD TV, as well as digital cinema projectors for a range of white points. This includes colors that can't be reproduced exactly using the sRGB primaries. There is no maximum brightness in the real world, so strong lighting can give color values well above 1. The values in the rendering space are directly proportional to the amount of light energy, which is consistent with modern rendering engines. To prepare a rendered image for display, the high dynamic range values of the rendering space must get mapped to values between 0 and 1, which represent the darkest and brightest values that are possible on a display device. The ACES tone map is an S-shaped curve that preserves the highlights and also boosts the contrast and saturation for a more photographic result. Textures of real objects should look like how they would in a photograph. The ACES tone map converts a rendering space value of a bit more than 16 to a display value of 1, and a rendering space value of 1 to a display value of about 0.81. This leaves room in the displayed image for highlights that are brighter than a blank piece of paper would be. However, the image becomes a bit darker overall because there needs to be some extra room near 1 for these highlights. In contrast, Maya's previous default settings use the sRGB primaries for rendering, so they can display only a much smaller gamut. The rendering space values are linearly proportional to light energy, just like with ACES, but the only adjustment for display is applying the sRGB gamma. This gamma maps a rendering value of 1 to a display value of 1. Higher values simply get clipped to 1, so any distinction between plain white and brighter highlights gets lost in the final image. This was a common workflow in older color pipelines, even though it was never ideal. If you prefer to use the legacy defaults anyway, you can change the rendering space to scene linear sRGB and the view to untone mapped. Alternatively, you can simply switch to the legacy color management configuration. If you want your settings to be the default for all new scenes, export your color management preferences as a policy. But note that doing this forces all scenes to use these settings, including any old scenes that you open. Another alternative is to set the OCIO environment variable to the full path of the configuration file to use before you start Maya. This environment variable affects all applications that use OCIO, but you can switch configurations for an individual session of Maya if you want. Simply set the environment variable in a shell before starting Maya from the same shell. Thanks for watching.